My name is Patrick Shelmo. I'm the president of Maryland Shall Issue Incorporated. We are a state grassroots organization dedicated to the preservation of self-defense civil rights within the state of Maryland. I'd like to first just go ahead and say thank you very much for having this committee and for taking the time to hear from us. I know there was a bit of work you did up front to accommodate the people who were expected to show up, and as always, we do very much appreciate it. I'd like to go ahead and speak a little bit about the divergence between the legislation, or what we see as a divergence between the legislation that was passed and some of the regulations that were proffered. We've spoken somewhat today about the training requirements. I will just say, as you're considering, so we've already established that the training requirement, nothing in the law requires a live fire demonstration. And there was a good amount of discussion about that, again, ad nauseum, regarding the issues regarding live fire. Some of the things I'd like you to consider as you are considering that regulation in particular is that training in general can be disenfranchising. Our history has shown that in the United States. In particular here in Maryland with this particular piece of requirement. The issue we have is, I'm just going to point out a few instances, and I'm not going to be completely comprehensive statewide. It could take a long time. Calvert County, St. Mary's County, Baltimore City, we don't have any public ranges there. So within Baltimore City in particular, we'll just focus on that. There are no public ranges. There's no way for a resident of the city to actually accommodate this regulation within their home city. There is, to our knowledge, and to my knowledge specifically, there are no public ranges available to meet this regulation, that proposed regulation, that will exist within a range of mass transit. Not without significant transfer and all the other work. I don't live in Baltimore. And within Calvert County, well, we don't have mass transit to begin with. So if you live in Calvert County, in the center of the county, you simply are not going to meet this requirement without getting in your car and driving. Of course, not everybody in Calvert County actually has an automobile. I can tell you for a fact, as a resident there, that within Southern Maryland, we have large populations of people who are unable to meet this requirement without having to somehow, by hook or by crook, get a ride to a range. Some of the other challenges with ranges, there are ranges within the state, and you can be a member. I imagine there are a number of people on this committee who actually are members of private ranges. Those private ranges, we've spoken to them. Now again, we represent well over 10,000 people in this state. A lot of them actually work for these ranges. They are concerned, their memberships, that they would be used for this function because they pay several $100s per month to use a private range so they can go. So if this suddenly gets opened up on the weekend to these types of classes, you know, all of a sudden the people, it's like going to, like paying for a private golf club, country club. I don't golf, but then suddenly having every weekend opened up to the public. That's not something people are paying for. There is no requirement within the law for a live fire exercise. The single shot, you know, you'll hear people say that it's good, it's bad. I can tell you as someone who is proficient in the use of a firearm, a single shot doesn't do anything for you. Nationwide, we scoured, we looked for any type of study anywhere which would, via objective criteria, identify the use of live fire actually increasing public safety. There are none. There simply are none. And in terms of the use of live fire nationwide as a barrier to the exercise of a right, Connecticut uses a live fire requirement for the actual carry portion as well as the purchase. There are several counties in New York who actually will do it, but that again is not required by state law, and I think a number of those laws are going to be challenged. Maryland would stand alone nationwide, to my knowledge, and I'd love to be educated by the committee. They would stand alone, to my knowledge. Maryland would be far ahead of the pack if we actually required a live fire requirement with a training requirement such as this to exercise a constitutional right. So as we go forward, I'd like you to take those points into consideration. I want to also just move along the Social Security numbers. There is a divergence in the regulation. I appreciated the conversation that was here, and I especially appreciated the comments of Mr. Bowen and Mr. Williams. The regulations actually do require Title 29, Subtitle 3, Section 116C1 says that a Social Security number, among other components, is required. The actual word used is shall include. And if you fast forward to Section 17, or I should say dot 17C, it says any knowing omission may be used to actually disapprove the application. So from our perspective, and I think from the committee's perspective, these types of errors are definitely things that do occur. If the state police do not intend to require a social security number, we would ask that this regulation await that correction and republishing before we can go ahead and consider it.